The battlefield was a burning wasteland. Smoke filled the air, and broken ships lay scattered like fallen giants. The sky above was a deep shade of crimson, flashing with the light of distant explosions. This planet, once a thriving colony, was now on the verge of destruction. Captain Elias Carter of the UEN Pathfinder scanned the area through his helmet visor. His team had landed minutes ago, searching for survivors before the enemy returned. His heart pounded, but his voice remained calm. "Stay alert. We don't have much time," he said into his communicator. His squad, a mix of highly trained UEN soldiers, moved swiftly through the wreckage. They weren't here for combat. They were here for rescue. The Zayari Dominion, a peaceful alien race, had been attacked by the warlike Taruk Imperium, and the humans had answered their distress call. A soft beep on Elias's wristpad drew his attention. His scanner had picked up a life sign. It was weak but stable. "Over here," he called out, motioning for his team to follow. They rushed forward and found a small escape pod, half buried in the debris. Its glass surface was cracked, and smoke leaked from the sides. Elias knelt and pressed a button on the panel. With a hiss, the pod's door struggled open. Inside, a figure lay motionless, a Zayari woman, her silver-blue skin covered in dust and bruises. She was dressed in royal robes, though they were torn and burned at the edges. A glowing crest on her wrist confirmed her identity. "She's a royal," one of the soldiers muttered. Elias didn't hesitate. He gently lifted her out of the pod. She was light, almost too fragile. Her breathing was shallow, and her golden eyes fluttered open for just a second before closing again. "She's alive, but she needs medical attention," he said. "We're taking her back." The team moved quickly, but just as they were about to reach the extraction point, a warning flashed across Elias's visor. "Enemy ships incoming." "Move now," he ordered. The ground shook as Tarnuk fighters swooped down, firing at anything that moved. Elias held the unconscious princess close, shielding her with his body as his team returned fire. They had no chance of winning a fight. There were too many of them. "Commander, the ship is ready," a voice crackled through the communicator. "On our way," Elias replied. The team sprinted toward the waiting shuttle. Blaster fire rained down, kicking up dirt and debris. Elias jumped into the craft just as the ramp began to close. "Get us out of here," he shouted. The engines roared to life, and the shuttle shot into the sky, narrowly dodging enemy fire. Elias let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He looked down at the Zayari woman in his arms. She was still unconscious, but now that he saw her up close, he realized something important. He hadn't just rescued anyone. He had rescued a princess, and soon, that would change everything. The UEN Pathfinder, a massive human battleship, floated in the depths of space, far from the battlefield. Inside the medical bay, Captain Elias Carter stood next to a high-tech examination bed, arms crossed as he watched the Zayari woman slowly regain consciousness. Her golden eyes fluttered open, filled with confusion. For a moment, she stared at the unfamiliar ceiling, then at the strange devices around her. She tried to sit up, but a sharp pain in her side made her wince. Elias stepped forward. "Easy now," he said in a calm voice. "You were injured, but you're safe." Her gaze snapped toward him, studying his face with a mixture of wariness and curiosity. Then, as if remembering something, her eyes widened in realization. I am alive," she whispered, her voice soft but filled with disbelief. Elias nodded. "Yeah, we got you out just in time." She turned her head, taking in the sight of the human captain in his dark blue uniform. His strong posture, steady voice, and calm expression were unlike anything she had seen before. "You are human?" she asked hesitantly. "That's right, Captain Elias Carter, United Earth Navy." He placed a hand on his chest in a respectful gesture. "And you are?" The Zayari woman straightened, despite her pain. "I am Princess Valyri of the Zayari Dominion." The room fell silent. Even the nearby medical officer glanced up in shock. Elias had suspected she was important, but a princess. That complicated things. Valeri's expression softened as she looked at Elias with deep gratitude. She placed a delicate hand over her heart, then extended it toward him, a formal gesture in her culture. "You saved my life," she said, her voice full of emotion. "You fought through fire and battle, risking yourself for me, a stranger. Words cannot express the depth of my gratitude." She took a deep breath and spoke with conviction. "From this moment forward, I offer you my eternal thanks." Elias gave her a small, reassuring smile. It was the right thing to do. Valeri smiled back, feeling safe for the first time in days. She did not know much about humans, but this one had proven himself to be brave, selfless, and noble. But neither of them realized what had just happened. A shocking revelation. An hour later, Elias sat in the Pathfinder's conference room with his officers, discussing their next steps. The Zayari Dominion had already been contacted, and a royal delegation was on its way to retrieve Princess Valeri. Just as they were finalizing the details, an urgent message came from the Zayari High Council. A holographic projection flickered to life in the center of the room, revealing a group of tall, regal-looking Zayari officials. The lead council member, an elder with silver hair and intricate robes, spoke first. "Captain Elias Carter," the elder said in a solemn tone, "we have received word of your heroic actions. You risked your life to save our princess. Such bravery is rare among any species." Elias shifted uncomfortably. "I just did what any soldier would do." The elder shook his head. "No, you did much more than that." He paused before delivering the shocking statement. "You have accepted the princess's proposal." The entire room fell silent. Elias blinked. "I what?" The elder continued. "The words she spoke to you. The vow of eternal gratitude is an ancient Zayari custom. When spoken to an outsider, it is recognized as a formal marriage proposal." Elias's jaw nearly dropped. "Wait, you're saying she?" "Yes," the elder said with great seriousness. "And by accepting her thanks so humbly, you have sealed the agreement." One of Elias's officers let out a quiet laugh, which quickly turned into a cough when the captain shot him a glare. Elias rubbed his temples, trying to process the situation. He had unknowingly just gotten engaged to an alien princess. The princess's reaction. Back in the medical bay, Valeri was enjoying her first proper meal in days when a Zayari attendant rushed in, looking panicked. "Princess," the attendant gasped, "the humans have just been informed of your proposal." Valeri nearly choked on her drink. "What? Proposal?" The attendant nodded. "The High Council has confirmed it. Captain Elias Carter is now your betrothed." Valeri froze, her mind racing. Then suddenly, her face turned a deep shade of violet. A Zayari blush. "Oh no," she whispered. She had accidentally proposed to a human. A growing problem. Elias stood at the bridge of the Pathfinder, staring out into space as he tried to figure out a way out of this mess. His second in command, Lieutenant Sarah Monroe, stood beside him, arms crossed. "So, what's the plan, fiancé?" "Not funny," Elias muttered. Monroe smirked. "Actually, it's hilarious." Elias sighed. "Look, there has to be a way to fix this. I didn't mean to accept a proposal. It's just a misunderstanding." Monroe shrugged. "Maybe. But the Zayari take their traditions seriously. If you back out now, it could cause a diplomatic disaster." Elias groaned. As if things weren't bad enough, the Tarnak Imperium was still out there, waiting for a chance to strike. If the Zayari and humans ended up in conflict over this, it could leave both their worlds vulnerable. And so, he had two major problems to deal with. Find a way to undo an accidental engagement without insulting an entire alien civilization. Keep the Zayari Dominion and the UEN strong against the real enemy, the Tarnak Imperium. As the ship's communicator beeped with an incoming transmission from the Scifi delegation, Elias straightened his uniform and took a deep breath. This was going to be a long day. Captain Elias Carter stood in the Pathfinder's conference room, staring at the holographic image of the Scifi High Council. The alien leaders, tall and elegant with their shimmering robes and glowing eyes, looked completely serious. "Captain Carter," the lead council member said, "the engagement between you and Princess Valeri is now official. The royal delegation will arrive soon to complete the next steps." Elias felt his stomach twist. He had accidentally accepted a marriage proposal, and now an entire alien civilization believed he was their future prince consort. His crew members struggled to keep straight faces, but Elias wasn't laughing. He cleared his throat. "Counselor, I respect your traditions, but this is a misunderstanding. I never intended to accept a proposal." The council members exchanged surprised glances. "Did the princess not offer you her eternal thanks?" "She did," Elias admitted. "And did you accept her gratitude with honor and humility?" Elias hesitated. "Yes, but—" "Then the bond is sealed," the counselor declared, as if it was the most obvious thing in the universe. To reject it now would be highly offensive. Elias sighed. "There has to be a way to fix this without insulting anyone." The counselor thought for a moment. "There is one option. If you complete the Scifi courtship trials, you may choose to either confirm or decline the engagement with full honor. But be warned, no outsider has ever succeeded in these trials." Elias frowned. "What kind of trials?" The counselor's expression was unreadable. "You will soon see." The transmission ended, leaving Elias standing in silence. Lieutenant Monroe, who had been watching the conversation, let out a low whistle. "Well, Captain, looks like you're about to compete in Alien Fiancé Olympics." Elias groaned. This was getting out of hand. The princess's apology. Meanwhile, in the medical bay, Princess Valeri sat on the examination bed, still recovering. When she heard about the courtship trials, her heart sank. "This is all my fault," she muttered. Her attendant, a young Scifi named Kale, nodded awkwardly. "Yes, but it was an honest mistake." Valeri buried her face in her hands. She had unintentionally trapped a human captain in her people's customs. Now he had to go through difficult trials just to prove he didn't want to marry her. "I must speak with him," she said firmly. A short while later, Valeri found Elias in the ship's observation deck, staring out into the vastness of space. His expression was unreadable, but she could tell he was deep in thought. She hesitated, then stepped forward. "Captain Carter." Elias turned and gave her a small, tired smile. "Princess." Valeri clasped her hands together, struggling to find the right words. I never meant for this to happen. I only wanted to thank you. I did not realize what my words meant in your presence." She lowered her gaze. "I am sorry." Elias chuckled, surprising her. "You don't have to apologize for your people's customs. I just wish someone had warned me before I walked into a galactic engagement." Valeri looked up at him, searching his face. Despite the situation, he didn't seem angry. If anything, he looked amused. He wasn't like other leaders she had met. "Will you go through with the trials?" she asked softly. Elias shrugged. "Seems like the best option. If it keeps the peace, I'll do it." Valeri felt a strange emotion rise in her chest. Admiration. Most men would have panicked, but Elias faced the situation with calmness and determination. "Then I will help you," she said. "If you must endure our trials, you should at least know what to expect." Elias raised an eyebrow. "You'd train me to pass your own traditions." Valeri gave him a small smile. It would not be fair otherwise. For the first time since the chaos began, Elias felt a little hope. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. The Tarnak make their move. While Elias prepared for the trials, danger was approaching. Far from the Pathfinder, in the dark reaches of space, the Tarnak Imperium was preparing to strike. Their leader, Commander Vormak, stood in his warship's command center, watching reports of the human Zayari engagement with interest. A union between Earth and the Zayari. Vormak growled. This could make them stronger. A Tarnak officer stepped forward. Commander, if this alliance is successful, Earth and the Zayari Dominion may unite their forces. That would threaten our plans. Vormak's red eyes gleamed with cruelty. Then we must act now. He turned toward his fleet. Prepare the attack. The trials begin. Back on the Pathfinder, Elias stood with Valeri in a holographic training room. The first trial was a test of intelligence, requiring him to solve complex Zayari puzzles. Your people must have supercomputers for brains, Elias muttered as he struggled with a series of shifting energy patterns. Valeri chuckled. It is meant to test patience as well as logic. Elias sighed, then focused. He wasn't going to let an alien puzzle defeat him. Hours passed, and with Valeri's help, Elias started to understand the patterns. He adapted quickly, surprising even the princess. You learned fast, she admitted. Humans are stubborn, Elias said with a grin. The second trial was a test of endurance, requiring Elias to navigate a simulated gravity field while carrying a heavy energy sphere. He struggled at first, but his military training kicked in. As he pushed through, Valeri found herself watching him closely. He was different. Unlike Zayari nobles, who relied on tradition, Elias faced every challenge with creativity and sheer willpower. For the first time, she wondered, had fate brought them together for a reason? But before she could dwell on the thought, a loud alarm blared through the ship. Elias and Valeri exchanged tense looks. A crew member's voice came through the communicator. Captain, enemy warships incoming. The Tarnak Imperium is here. Elias clenched his fists. The trials could wait. There was a battle to fight. The alarm blared across the UEN Pathfinder, filling the halls with a sense of urgency. Red warning lights flashed, and officers rushed to their stations. On the command bridge, Captain Elias Carter stood firm, his sharp eyes locked on the holographic display of the approaching enemy ships. It was the Tarnak Imperium. They're coming in fast, Lieutenant Monroe reported. 4 warships, heavily armed. They must have tracked the princess's location. Elias clenched his fists. The Zayari Dominion and the United Earth Navy had only just started forming an alliance. If the Tarnak struck now, they could destroy any chance of peace between the two species. Raise shields, Elias ordered. Prepare all defense systems. We hold our ground. At that moment, Princess Valeri entered the bridge. She had changed from her medical robes into a proper Zayari combat uniform, her golden eyes filled with concern. The Tarnak, she whispered, staring at the display. Elias turned to her. They must have figured out that you're here. They won't let this alliance happen. Valeri's jaw tightened. The Tarnak have always feared unity between species. They believe in conquest, not cooperation. Elias nodded. Well, they're about to learn that humans don't back down either. The Pathfinder shook violently as the first barrage of Tarnak plasma cannons struck the shields. Shields holding at 82%, Monroe called out. But if they keep this up, we won't last forever. Elias narrowed his eyes. Then let's hit them back. Fire all forward cannons. The Pathfinder roared to life, unleashing a storm of blue energy beams at the enemy fleet. The shots found their marks, blasting through the shields of one Tarnak warship. The ship exploded in a bright flash, sending debris scattering into space. One down, Monroe cheered. But the battle was far from over. The remaining 3 Tarnak ships moved into formation, surrounding the Pathfinder. They're trying to trap us, a crew member shouted. Elias cursed under his breath. The Tarnak weren't just strong, they were strategic. Valeri took a step forward. Captain, I have an idea. Elias turned to her. I'm listening. The Tarnak warships have a weakness, she explained. Their targeting systems rely on a central command ship. If we disable their flagship, the others will lose coordination. Elias grinned. Now that's useful information. He turned to Monroe. Target their command ship. Let's shut them down. A desperate plan. As the Pathfinder maneuvered through enemy fire, the Tarnuk ships closed in. The flagship, a massive black warship, loomed over them like a predator. We need to get closer, Monroe said, but they'll tear us apart before we reach them. Elias glanced at Valeri. Any more bright ideas? The princess hesitated, then nodded. There is one. The Zayari use a cloaking pulse to temporarily disrupt enemy sensors. If I can access the ship's systems, I can modify it to work against the Tarnuk. Elias considered it. It was risky, but right now, they needed every advantage. Do it, he said. Valeri rushed to the control panel and began working. Her fingers danced across the interface, entering complex Zayari codes. A tense minute passed. Outside, the Tarnuk warship circled, preparing for a final strike. Then, done, Valeri announced. Activating the pulse. Now, a shockwave of invisible energy rippled through space. Instantly, the Tarnuk ship's sensors failed. Their targeting systems flickered, their formations broke apart. Now's our chance. Elias shouted. Fire everything at their flagship. The Pathfinder unleashed its full firepower, sending a wave of blue-white energy straight into the enemy's command ship. The explosion was massive, tearing through the warship's core. The Tarnuk flagship burst apart, and the remaining ships, now disorganized and leaderless, retreated into deep space. A stunned silence filled the Pathfinder's bridge. Then, a cheer erupted from the crew. Elias let out a breath and turned to Valeri. That was some quick thinking, Princess. She smiled. I told you, I would help you. Aftermath and a new challenge. Hours later, after confirming the Tarnuk's retreat, Elias found himself back in the conference room, staring at a new transmission. This time, it was from the Zayari royal delegation. The screen flickered, revealing Ambassador Calvin, a high-ranking Zayari official with silver robes and piercing eyes. Captain Carter, the ambassador said, we have heard of your heroic defense of our princess. You have not only saved her life again, but also proven yourself worthy of the courtship trials. Elias groaned internally. Not this again. I was just doing my duty, he said carefully. Calvin nodded. Nevertheless, the trials must continue. You have passed the first challenge. Bravery in battle. Elias blinked. Wait, that counted as part of the trials. Yes, Calvin said seriously, but there are still 3 more tests ahead. Elias rubbed his temples. He had just fought off an enemy fleet, and now he had to compete in more alien traditions. Valeri stepped forward. Ambassador, perhaps we should reconsider. But Calvin interrupted. The next trial will take place soon. Prepare yourself, Captain Carter. The transmission ended. Elias sighed. Monroe smirked. Guess you're stuck in this, Captain. Valeri gave Elias an apologetic look. I will help you however I can. Elias glanced at her and exhaled. He wasn't sure if this was a test, or if fate was playing a joke on him. But one thing was clear. His adventure was far from over. Captain Elias Carter sat in the briefing room of the UEN Pathfinder, staring at the holographic message left by the Zayari royal delegation. The words echoed in his head. You have passed the first challenge, bravery in battle, but there are still 3 more trials ahead. Elias sighed and rubbed his forehead. He had just fought off a Tarnuk attack, saved the princess, again, and now he was still stuck in this alien engagement mess. Lieutenant Monroe leaned against the wall, arms crossed, trying not to laugh. So, Captain, what's the next test? Arm wrestling, a Zayari warlord. Before Elias could answer, Princess Valeri entered the room. She looked calm, but he could tell she was worried. The second trial, she said, is the trial of wisdom. Elias frowned. I was hoping for something easier, like a foot race. Valeri shook her head. This test is not about physical strength. It is about understanding the Zayari way of thinking. You must solve a challenge given by the high scholars of Zayara. Monroe whistled. Sounds like alien homework. Elias wasn't so sure. What kind of challenge? Valeri hesitated. It will be a test of logic, problem-solving, and diplomacy. But I do not know the exact details. Elias sighed. Great, a surprise test. The journey to the Zayari Council. The Pathfinder set course for the Zayari homeworld, a planet filled with towering crystal cities and glowing rivers of energy. The Zayari were known for their advanced technology and deep traditions, and now Elias was about to be judged by their wisest leaders. As the ship entered orbit, Elias felt a weight on his shoulders. He had always been a man of action, a soldier who relied on instinct. But now he had to prove himself with words and intellect. Valeri stood beside him as they prepared to leave the ship. Do not worry, Captain. I will be there to guide you. Elias smirked. I'll try not to embarrass myself in front of your scholars. The trial begins. Inside the Great Hall of Wisdom, Elias stood before 3 elder Zayari scholars. They had long, flowing robes decorated with symbols of knowledge, and their eyes shimmered like stars reflecting in water. The lead scholar, an elderly Zayari named Master Kortal, studied Elias carefully. You are an outsider, he said, yet you have saved our princess. And now you stand before us, seeking to prove your wisdom. Elias kept his expression calm. I'll do my best. Master Kortal nodded and gestured toward a large stone table in front of them. On it were 4 strange objects. A golden key, a blue crystal, a holographic map, a small metal cube. This is your test, Kortal said. Before you are 4 items. Only one of them can unlock the door behind us. Elias glanced at the large stone door at the back of the room. There were no visible locks, handles, or keypads. Just an ancient inscription written in Zayari. You must choose wisely, Kortal continued. If you choose incorrectly, the trial ends. Elias studied the objects. A key, a crystal, a map, and a cube. Each one could be important, but which one actually opened the door? He thought about how the Zayari valued knowledge and strategy. They wouldn't make this simple. It wasn't just about guessing. It was about understanding. Can I examine the inscription on the door? Elias asked. Master Kortal raised an eyebrow, but nodded. You may. Elias walked closer and studied the symbols. He didn't understand the Zayari language, but Valeri stepped forward and whispered, It is an ancient saying. Knowledge is the key to all doors. Elias smirked. That helps. He returned to the table. The golden key seemed too obvious. The crystal and the cube were mysteries. But the holographic map, he picked it up and activated it. A glowing display appeared, showing a complex star chart. Elias turned to the scholars. Knowledge is the key, right? This map represents knowledge, so it must be the answer. Master Kortal smiled. Let us see. Elias placed the holographic map against the door. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the symbols on the door glowed, and with a soft hum, the massive stone structure slid open. Elias let out a breath. He had passed the trial. The scholars' approval. Master Kortal nodded, clearly impressed. You did not rush your decision. You asked the right questions and used logic over instinct. You have shown wisdom, Captain Carter. Elias smiled. I try. Valeri looked at him with something new in her eyes, respect, and maybe something more. Master Kortal stepped forward. You have passed the second trial. But the next challenge will test something even greater, your heart. Elias frowned. That sounds emotional. Master Kortal simply nodded. You will soon understand. A moment of reflection. Later, as Elias and Valeri walked through the glowing streets of the Zayari capital, Elias sighed. These trials are more complicated than I expected. Valeri smiled. You are doing well. Better than most. Elias glanced at her. What exactly is the next trial? Valeri hesitated, then said softly, the trial of honor. It will test what you value most. Elias raised an eyebrow. And what happens if I fail? Valeri looked away. Then the engagement will be considered dishonorable. Elias frowned. There was something she wasn't telling him. But before he could ask, a loud beep came from his communicator. Monroe's voice crackled through. Captain, we have a problem. The Tarnuk are back. Elias's expression hardened. Another battle was coming. And this time, it wasn't just about the trials. It was about war. Captain Elias Carter rushed back to the Pathfinder's command bridge as the alarm blared across the ship. The moment he entered, Lieutenant Monroe turned to him, face tense. We just picked up Tarnuk warships on long-range sensors, she reported. Looks like they're regrouping. Elias clenched his jaw. The Tarnuk hadn't given up after their last defeat. They were coming back, probably with more firepower. We can't let them attack the Zayari homeworld, Elias said. How long until they reach us? Monroe checked the data. About 6 hours. Elias exhaled. Then we don't have much time. Valeri, standing beside him, looked concerned. Captain, the trial of honor is supposed to take place soon. Elias blinked. You're serious. We have a war incoming, and they still expect me to do this. Valeri hesitated. The Zayari believe that true honor is proven in difficult times. They will see this as part of the trial. Elias sighed. He didn't have a choice. If he refused, the alliance could be lost. If he failed, the engagement would be dishonorable. And on top of all that, a battle was coming. A moment later, the holographic screen flickered to life, revealing the Tarnuk commander. He was tall, with dark, leathery skin and sharp predatory eyes. His armor was decorated with battle scars, proof of many past victories. I am Commander Vorgar of the Tarnuk Empire, the alien growled. Stand down, human. This is not your fight. Elias crossed his arms. It is now. The Zayari are under my protection. Vorgar laughed. You think one ship can stop us? Elias smirked. Why don't you find out? The Tarnuk commander's smile faded. So be it. Prepare for battle. The transmission cut off. Elias turned to Monroe. Fire warning shots. Let them know we're serious. The Pathfinder's railguns lit up, sending a volley of energy bolts across space. The Tarnuk ships dodged. But the message was clear. The humans weren't running. The battle for Zayara. The Tarnuk ships opened fire first. Bright beams of energy streaked through space, slamming against the Pathfinder shields. The ship shook, but the defenses held. Shields at 80%, Monroe reported. Elias gritted his teeth. Return fire. Target their engines. The Pathfinder launched a counterattack, sending precise blasts toward the enemy fleet. One of the Tarnuk warships lurched as its thrusters were damaged. Valeri stood beside Elias, gripping the console. Captain, the Zayari fleet is launching. We're not alone. On the holographic display, sleek Zayari ships emerged from the planet's orbit, their glowing wings spreading like celestial birds. They moved with grace and precision, joining the fight. A Zayari commander's voice came through the comms. We fight beside you, Captain Carter. Elias nodded. Then let's end this. Turning the tide. The battle raged on. The Pathfinder weaved through the chaos, dodging incoming fire while striking back with well-placed attacks. One Tarnuk ship exploded, breaking apart into fiery debris. But the flagship, Commander Vorgar's vessel, remained strong. We need to take out their leader, Elias said. If Vorgar falls, the others might retreat. Valeri's eyes glowed with determination. Then let me help. She rushed to the communications panel and sent a direct transmission to Vorgar's ship. "This is Princess Valyri of the Zyari Empire," she declared. "Commander Vorgar, you cannot win this battle. Surrender now, and we will allow you to leave in peace." The Tarnuk commander appeared on screen again, his face twisted in frustration. A princess giving orders. Your people grow weak. Valyri stood tall. "No, my people grow stronger because we fight together, and that is why you will lose." Elias smirked. "She's right, you know. Your fleet is losing ground. This is your last chance to retreat." Vorgar hesitated. His forces were struggling. Another Zyari ship fired a powerful energy beam, disabling one of the last remaining Tarnuk warships. The commander growled, "This is not over, human." With a final glare, he cut transmission, and moments later, his flagship turned and jumped into hyperspace. The remaining Tarnuk ships fled with him, vanishing into the void. The battle was over. Victory and a new beginning. Cheer erupted across the Pathfinder's ridge. The crew celebrated, relieved and victorious. Monroe grinned. "I have to admit, Captain, that was impressive." Elias exhaled. "I aimed to please." Valyri turned to him, her expression soft but proud. "You kept your word, Elias. You stood by my people." He nodded. "An oath is an oath." A moment of silence passed between them. There was something more in her eyes now. A new kind of respect, maybe even admiration. Ambassador Calvin's voice came through the comms. "Captain Carter, you have proven your honor in every way. The Zyari recognize you as one of us." Elias chuckled. "Does that mean I passed all the trials?" Calvin laughed. "Yes, and according to our customs, the engagement still stands." Elias froze. "Wait, so I'm still?" Valyri smirked. "Yes, Captain. You are still engaged to me." Monroe burst into laughter. "Well, congratulations, sir." Elias sighed. "You know, I thought saving the galaxy would be the hard part." Valyri stepped closer. "Do not worry, Elias. If you wish, we can take things one step at a time." He looked at her, this brave, intelligent, and beautiful alien princess who had stood by his side. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't such a bad situation after all. He grinned. "You know what? That sounds like a plan."